the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
This is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
Greetings and welcome to this episode of AVNation TV Connected. I'm your host, David Danto. We've been going through a little bit of technical somersaults today, so apologize if we're a little punchy, but for those of you that follow our shows, we're always typically a little punchy, so it doesn't really matter. I'm joined by a co-host on this show. Tim, why don't you introduce yourself for a second?
Hello, my name is Tim Albright. I'm from AVNation.
That's great, thank you. And we have two guests that are going to talk to us about future in technology. Let me have Neil introduce himself. Sit up, Neil, come on.
Sorry, everybody. I'm morning, afternoon. I'm Neil Flurster. I'm a product director at Poly, and great to be here this afternoon.
That works, thank you. I told you we'd be punchy. And David, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm David Maldo, the founder of Let's Do Video, covering everything you see.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, guys. So what I really want to talk about is that for this episode is that there's a lot of new technology that people may not be aware of that's eking into the AV and collaboration space. You know, this is an interesting pair of, and it cuts across all technologies. This is an interesting pair of, I mean, they're not headphones that I got at CES from the Clear Audio folks, really brilliant people in the industry. They don't compete with anything that I do. This is, you know, if you're working out, if you're walking and you'd like to hear music, but you don't want to cover your ears. So there's going to be this whole new category of wearable devices where, you know, these, you know, I think this is their first generation product where it's speakers that are near my ears. Their second generation product, which I don't have here, actually does beamforming to your ears. So, I mean, you gotta love it when you see changes that are actually, you know, moving the progression forward. Here's another one, which I think is actually a little bit silly, but I got about 5 of these from the folks that do telephone holders, Snap, where, you know, it fits on your mobile device, and when you pop it out, you can hold it that way, or you can turn it, or you can prop it with a screen, or it's magnetic. So, you know, the people are going to technologies that we used to use, you know, whether it was, you know, a pair of headphones or something as silly as something that you hold your mobile phone with, and really thinking about it differently and changing the way it operates. And that's kind of what we're talking about here today. I'm going to start with David, because, you know, we've been doing webcasts like this one, like live ones, like other ones for years and years, and nobody's really ever tried to think about changing the dynamic. And David's come along here and presented some really outstanding courses at a couple of the live events, and he's going to demonstrate some of that for us right now. So, David, you want to do that? And,
sure,
and Neil and Tim, kick in whenever you like. This is a group conversation.
Yeah. Oh, you know, I wasn't expecting wearables, but I happen to have right here Bose sunglasses. And you wear them, and there's nothing that goes in your ear. And you'd think it would sound like tinny and far away, like if you had headphones away from your ear. But I guess it goes like right through your head or something. It sounds like you're wearing headphones. It's amazing. So wearables is a thing. But what I want to share with you today is something that I call live video editing. We've been doing, like David said, webinars, video calls the same way for years. And recently, through a hobby, which I'll explain later, I learned this technique that I can do basically anything I would do in post-production, anything you would do in Premiere Pro, video editing, I can do live. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to try to show you things which, unless you've been watching my recent webinars, I think you've never seen before. So 5 minutes. Virtual assistant, please start the timer. Get a little closer to the mic. And by the way, this is new, so some of it is a little tricky. Oh, I need to turn on the virtual assistant. Virtual assistant, please start the timer.
Okay, David. I've started a 5-minute timer.
Okay, and I'm going to bet that in the 5 minutes, I'm going to show you things you've never seen before. And I probably already won, because I'm assuming most of you have never seen a virtual assistant start a timer. But let's do the normal webinar thing, right? What do? We share a screen. Virtual assistant, please share my screen. Virtual assistant, please share my screen.
Okay, David. Sharing screen.
Okay, so this is the Let's Do Video website. I suggest you go up to the top menu, podcasts. We've been doing some fun podcasts. I show how to do my tricks and everything. And this is the way that I meet with my clients and I show off my website. But the thing is, this isn't right. when I'm meeting, it's not about the content. I mean, it is, but the primary message isn't the website or the PowerPoint that I have behind me. It's me, and I'm stuck in this tiny little box. So what I want to do is just sort of reach out of the box and get out of the box completely and just be with my content. Virtual assistant, get rid of the box.
Okay, David. Let's change the way we do webinars.
Virtual assistant, make me full-sized.
Okay, David, I've changed the camera view.
Okay, so now I'm with my content. Now I'm like a weatherman. Now I can interact. I can do all sorts of fun things. And you might say, well, hold on a second. You're in the way. Okay, fine. I'll just move myself to the side. And if there's something on this side that I want to show, okay, I'll just move myself to the other side. I can do anything I want. And I really mean anything I want. You think, okay, so I learned some camera tricks. I'm able to move my camera around. I'm able to put whatever I want behind me. But it's a lot more than that. I can do anything I want. I wanted to try my last podcast. I thought it'd be fun to do as a newscaster. So in a very short amount of time, I created this. If I want to do an interview, a little program, I can. Hello, guys. How's it going? Good to see you today. Welcome to the Let's Do video. I could do anything I want. And the backgrounds, if I want something a little bit more, like this little cityscape. And the way I came up with this stuff is it's because of a hobby. About 3 or 4 years ago, I was watching this website called twitch.tv. If you haven't heard of it, it's the biggest thing in streaming. It's massive, millions of streamers. Amazon bought it for $1 gazillion. And it started out being primarily about video games. Video game streamers stream themselves in a pip with the video game behind them. And I'm too old to play all the games, but I like video games. I wanted to see what the new ones were, so I watched the kids play them. And about the same time, I decided I wanted to start learning guitar. And Twitch opened up beyond gaming. They have art, they have cooking, they have music, they have people streaming all these things. And I saw these guitarists streaming themselves. So I started a guitar stream about 2 years ago. I've been streaming 5-6 nights a week. I'm within the guitarist community. We're all friends. And I started using this software that the streamers use. But being me, being a software analyst, I started learning all the buttons and all the tools and all the tricks. And I learned to do some amazing things. And just to show you, because we only have a minute left before I have to make my promise, I'm going to show you some things that I do in my guitar stream. And no, you wouldn't do this in a business webinar. But I'm not a marketing person. I'm not a creative person. I'm an analyst. Imagine what a marketing team could do with these sort of crazy fun effects. Imagine if you're selling a video game. You can put yourself in the video game. I like to do, this is a fun one. When I'm playing guitar, I want to feel like a rock star. So I made myself a rock star, and during my guitar stream, and people show up in the chat and request songs, I have my guitar and I play the songs for them, but I do it like this. Now again, are you going to use this in a business webinar? Probably not this exactly, but you could definitely use the techniques, use the ideas, use the concept of total freedom. Oh, it looks like I messed up and started my timer again. Let me turn that off. And I think it's almost done. But just another fun example. Sometimes I want to, in the middle of my stream, get a drink or something. I could just say, I'll be back in a minute, or I could say, be right back. That's just fun. And that took a little, this was advanced. But that's just fun. I'm sorry, I love that. Serenity now. Okay.
David, that's very cool stuff, and
Sorry
it
to
reminds
interrupt,
me.
but your timer is up.
That's very cool stuff. It reminds me that when I learned television production when I was in school, we learned about what each transition meant. So obviously you can cut or you can dissolve or you can fade, and each one had a connotation in the mind's eye of what it meant to change in time and place or not, and how it went. And then when they introduced television production to countries that didn't have it before, without explaining those rules, you were seeing, I remember India was one example, and there are a few other ones. This goes back many, many years. When they first had it, you were seeing some wild things like wipes and pushes where they didn't specifically belong because no one explained any of the production rules when they just introduced the technology. So we're kind of at that phase right now.
You just described Twitch.
Yeah,
you just described Twitch.
We're at that.
And you just described my stream.
So I've seen Twitch. My son's a gamer. I used to go to Evo every year. We now have more capabilities than we had before, so now we need to build production rules around them. And certainly with everything that's been going on in the news around pandemics and moving conferences virtual and everything else, these are tools that can take, the same stodgy webinar, and if used, with some, wraparound production rules around it, can really, make it a different experience than the typical webinar. So, I think it's really cool. Tim, I don't want to be the only guy talking. What do you think?
I have a question. Do we have to have those rules though? That's the thing is, David and I was on with Chris Netto a couple of weeks ago, and you guys had used a poly system, a poly camera. There was not a camera operator, and although if you didn't know that, you would be hard pressed to say that there wasn't, because the system itself zoomed in and focused on the people talking. Sometimes it was a two-person shoot. Sometimes our buddy Tom Berry kind of chimed in over there in the left-hand corner from the peanut gallery, so it zoomed out and got everybody. At times it was David talking, so it was a one-person shot. I don't think that necessarily we have to reframe or put the old rules in place, because the upcoming generations are telling us what their rules are. Twitch is a perfect example of that. There are no rules. There is a rule that the rules will be those that the community makes. And so there will be rules for business, right? David Maldo is right. You would necessarily put yourself in a rock concert when you're presenting to a client. However, demonstrating something that you can do and the capabilities of a system, absolutely you might. So I don't know that the old rules apply.
No, I agree. I think we're kind of trailblazing here and making new rules and new systems for it. David, have you had anybody reach out to you and say, I want to do this for a conference or for a webinar in the past?
The reaction that I've been getting to just recently, I've been doing my webinars this way. And and some of the webinars have been about this, but some of the webinars have been about something else, but I've used these techniques. And regardless, I get questions, how is David doing that? How can I learn how to do that? I gave a presentation at Zoomtopia Live, and the very first question after the presentation was, are you making a tutorial? So I have a small starter tutorial. If you go to letsdovideo.com, podcast number 50 is a basic tutorial how to get started. And I made that because every time I do this, people are saying, hey, come on, how are you doing that?
And I'm going to use the we for the four of us, even though, I'm assuming, but I think I know you guys. We tend to build these things so that we can operate them. So yeah, I can hit 7 buttons with my left hand and 3 with my right hand while I'm twiddling my left foot and hitting the bass drum at the same time. That's not necessarily how the typical webcast participant or operator is going to operate. So it's one thing to be able to do it even with a tutorial. It's another thing for us to make it slick and easy and as you're showing with a virtual assistant, so that it doesn't take one of us to do it. It can be done by anybody who's comfortable with just the basics of technology.
And it is, and the program that I'm using it's called OBS, Open Broadcaster Software, and it's an open program. It's not made by a for-profit company, so it's not the slickest interface. It's not actually it is a good interface. It really is good, but it's not designed to be consumer friendly. It's designed for streamers, and yet there's 10 million 8-year-olds, no, you have to be 13-year-olds streaming on Twitch using it, and they're able to get it to work and they're able to use it. And there's also some 80-year-olds streaming on Twitch who are able to use it. But it's one thing to make your one scene and have your one thing behind you, and it's another thing to have what I have going on. So it scales up. There's levels of how deep you want to dig into it and how good you want to get at it.
There's some
All right.
add-on tools now for OBS as well, so you can get like an actual tactile controller. So rather than sitting there with hotkeys and things like that, you can. Stream Deck is one, I think, and you can get these kind of. There you go.
So this is
options. Yeah, the Stream Decks are brilliant. So you can obviously have the phase and the transitions and stuff. I play with it a bit. I don't do Twitch. I've done some live stream stuff on my YouTube channel, and certainly OBS is just awesome. So yeah. Great.
Cool.
I think the interesting point about webinars, the challenge with any webinar is it's a linear thing, and you got their attention at the beginning, but then the attention rate starts to fade off when you've got someone talking about this great presentation like this. It's hard to get their attention, and again, by adding in some of these scene changes, by adding in, we always find that having multiple people speaking, just the difference of a couple of different voices keeps people awake and gets their attention. But again, firing up a webinar with a bit more action is all good in my mind. Just try to pull people on and keep them on.
Interactivity. The webinar's been doing, the more I can get the chat involved. Chat is a thing. Chat, you treat chat like it's an entity. It's all about the chat. And one thing I did in the last few webinars, let me see if I can get this to work, is I put the chat up on the screen with me.
Questions and you answer them back.
Yes. So during the webinar, I said, "Hey, has anyone ever seen a webinar where they had someone doing the rock star scene?" And everyone types no, no, no. And I moved to see everyone's. Oh, David says no. Tim says no. Hey, chat's lighting up here. Hey, has anyone ever had a really bad webinar experience? The chat went crazy, and I'm smiling, laughing, and everyone's saying, "Hey, I'm seeing my name in the chat. I'm seeing my name in the chat." Those people were not about to log off. Those people did not leave the webinar. Those people stayed because they were part of the webinar.
That's directing
the ideal.
Bob from Milwaukee, I'm going to do bad geography of North America now, or Pete from New York, answering their questions personally. I guess the challenge is as you grow and as you become more popular, you're going to need someone to then sit there and moderate that for you, because you obviously can't present live and constantly switch back between you and
producers. There's a shout out to the producers of the world. There you go. Let's be in the background, screen those calls, screen those chats.
And it's a new streamer skill. If you watch Twitch, the best streamers are the ones who are able to do whatever they're doing, play guitar, play their games, and constantly read chat. And I'm learning it. I'm developing that skill, but it is a new skill for streamers. And when I watch streamers who are good at it, I don't know how they do it. It's really amazing. But some people are able to do very complex things, speaking whatever, and at the same time, they're completely answering everything in chat with a fast chat. That's the next stage of being a good streamer.
The interesting thing they do on YouTube is that you can do a super chat, so you can kind of pay money to kind of get emboldened. So the usual, everyone can chat, but you can do a super chat if you donate some money to the person, and then you're kind of get involved. So again, that's another interesting monetization piece of this as it kind of moves forward, I guess.
So, David, your demo here is terrific, and I think it lays down the gauntlet for Tim and I in terms of our future presentations online at AVNation TV. We're going to have to up our game at least slightly. I can always bring more toys, but using the technology may be a little bit hard.
I'm here to help. Let's talk offline.
Absolutely.
Done.
One of the things that's interesting though is bringing both David and Neil into this is. We talked with Neil at ISC and chatted about some technologies. I met Maldo a number of years ago, actually at AVI Systems, when he was first started talking about unified communications and video, and how those two entities have evolved both from the business side and the consumer side. And we're in the middle of the Corona COVID-19 thing, and there's been a lot of chatter. Chris Netto this past Sunday started talking about whether or not folks should start looking more and more into remote connections and remote conferences.
Tim, I have to interrupt you for a second. Yes. Those are some really outstandingly written questions for Mr. Netto on Sunday, right? I mean, it's almost as if some third party really worked on making sure that those are some fabulous questions that were asked. So definitely compliments from me as well. But please continue.
No. But here's the thing, though. That's one of the things that we've been talking with folks about helping them. If the conference gets canceled, what do they do? right? How do they recover some of those costs? You're probably not going to recover all the costs, but getting that content out to people who are either not allowed to come because of companies' edicts that said that the travel bans, and I just got an email this morning from one, or the city, as in South by Southwest, or the conference system itself said, we're not allowing you to host your event. How do you continue to connect with your folks? And one of the ways art is stuff like what Maldo is showing, and getting that stuff out there. Neil, when you guys are looking at stuff like this, how are you able to help from a poly manufacturer standpoint get that product smoothly and quickly to the front lines, because there's some folks that's going to be needing that here in the next couple of weeks and months?
Yeah, we've actually just put some bundles together for home workers with a headset, a conference phone, and a small camera, because clearly, again, a lot of companies out there. We had, I think it was Chevron, a North American company in London, shut their building down and sent everybody home in Canary Wharf recently. And again, it's great for people to be able to embrace flexible working, but if you don't have the environment, we've all got kind of home offices set up. You guys have got green screens and stuff. I've got my own purpose office because I'm based here. But if it's not your everyday workplace, you're going to be on your kitchen table, in the corner of your bedroom, and the environment's one thing, but then obviously the technology's the other thing. Because it's all very well and good to be able to, join a call, but if you're and people can't hear you because you've got poor internet, you've got bad microphones, you've got bad camera, that's leads to the real challenge. So again, we've started to put together some bundles around this. It's interesting, as product supply from a lot of companies, is going to be a real challenge. And we're obviously doing a lot around that with regards to our product development and delivery. But again, trying to get some good packages, cost-effective packages that we can get out to customers, so that they can still have these contingency plans. It's bad that the video conferencing industry always sells on a negative. We love a good volcano going off or a good pandemic, because, for us, it's always good. But
I don't know if they love it, but okay.
I get it. It's the VC industry generally, is great around the 30 days of doom when there's the Olympics or World Cup coming to your town, or it's say volcanoes going off and no one can travel. But again, it's a really great opportunity to actually embrace this. It shouldn't be a negative. We should make it a positive. For me, flexible working means that I can drop my son off at school, pick him up, still carry on my day-to-day work, join calls globally with you guys in North America, me sitting here in London, and being able to carry on my work wherever I am. So I absolutely think it's actually going to be a catalyst to hopefully allow more organizations to embrace flexible working, embrace working from home, and more individuals will see that there is that the soft benefits from a quality of life point of view and a family point of view as well. So
yeah. And Tim, I've been just stunned over the last few weeks. You guys have read my blogs for, at least 20 years, talking about remote working and smarter working and flexible working. And I've been fighting, the business publications and the Wall Street publications and major companies talking about, oh, this will never happen, this will never catch on. And all of a sudden, in the middle of this pandemic now, we have a flood of articles talking about, with all of these people who said it wasn't possible and didn't work, giving their tips on how working from home should work. The first tip is to ignore anybody who hasn't embraced it until there was a pandemic. And it's just really interesting how many of these guys want to jump on the bandwagon. But let's change gears just for a second, David. You gave us a little bit of a heads up on the technology of changing webcasts, and I think, Neil, you have a couple of things you want to share with us and a couple of slides to show around how the actual technology in the cameras and the microphones is changing using AI, and that we'll kind of use that as sort of the capper of this as to how these things are changing. So let's give you the floor for a minute, and why don't you share with us what you got?
Yeah, thanks, David. Actually, interesting point that Tim brought up earlier about your recording. I think it was in New York. We're trying as a vendor, as a manufacturer, to put more production rules, as we call them, into our cameras and make our cameras more smart. Traditionally, a camera has been a mechanical, pan, tilt, X, Y, and Z axis that had motors in there.
Got to grab one of these and start pressing
exactly.
buttons.
I mean, I go on here, zoom it, pan it, tilt it. But the challenge that always brings is, in a meeting room environment, everyone either doesn't bother doing it, or one team can do it, the next team can't. So you either get a massive wide shot of lots of dots down the end of the table, or you get really zoomed in and you miss everybody out of the room. So again, trying to put some of the AI technology and the machine learning technology into some of our products to be able to brace that. So I was just going to share up and sort of take you under the hood of actually what's happening and what's going on in some of our cameras. So if I just bring up my screen here, so hopefully you can all see this, and someone tell me you can, so I'm not just talking away without seeing the content there. Cool. So again, we're putting these production rules into the cameras. We've had for a long time a couple of main ones. The first one being group framing. It's using a facial recognition algorithm, which I'm going to show you in a second how it works. And making sure everyone's in shot. At 9 o'clock you have 2 people in the meeting room. At 10 o'clock you've got 6 people in the meeting room. It always looks for the faces and always makes sure you're beautifully framed and everyone is absolutely in shot. You're not looking down a bowling room table at 2 little dots down the end. And in many cases with any kind of video conferencing room, everyone gets held up and caught up on the in-room experience. I want the biggest screen, I want the best audio and the best table and chairs. But we always forget, or actually the biggest part of video is what the far end gets. It's what you're projecting to the far end. It's that one person who's self-isolating for 14 days and couldn't make it into that meeting today, giving them a good experience and trying to make them feel as close to being there as they can. So again,
yeah, Neil, I'll interrupt you with a quick story. When I was a consultant, I had to do a series of video interviews for one of my clients where I was, rather than show up in all their offices and do the surveys, they wanted us to use their video system. So they had rooms in 20 cities and we scheduled these interviews. And I have to tell you, half of the interviews were with shots of people looking at their legs under the table. And looking at their knees. People who walk into these rooms don't realize that there's something they need to adjust, and the remote side can't adjust it, and they don't know how or don't want to bother. So it's a major improvement to know that you will never have to pick up a remote or a touch panel again to adjust the camera. The camera's just going to figure it out.
No, absolutely. And again, the interesting dynamic of this is, some of these, big ecosystem vendors like Microsoft and Zoom, because they're working with all these different vendors, they're not actually putting camera controls in their software. If you take an MTR, for example, Microsoft Teams Room system, there is no camera control in the Teams Room interface. So you either have to use a manual old-fashioned remote control, or you use smart camera. And again, some cameras are smarter than others. And again, I'm going to take you under the hood of some of our cameras and show you just what's going on. But again, we've got these other production rules. So group framing is one. So as I say, always make sure you're perfectly in shot, depending on the size of the meeting. Speaker tracking is where we're actually pulling out the person who's speaking, bringing them into the spotlight, bringing them front and center and making their conversation flow, and as I say, giving them that spotlight, giving them the floor to talk. And as different people talk, it will cut between them. And actually, there's a new production rule we brought out, which actually smoothly pans, which again, I'll show you in a second, between the people talking in the room. So it's no longer just a cut. It's as if there is a cameraman, and it eases the camera. So you get this really nice dynamic exponential move that will slowly speed up and then slow down between the people talking in the room. So it's very, very fluid in the way it works. And then lastly, down the bottom, you'll see we have a technology called conversation mode, where if you've got 2 people sitting further away from each other that are kind of batting, or that kind of tennis rally between 2 people, yes, it is, no, it's not, yes, it is, no, it's not. It will actually bring up both of them, and you'll get this kind of side by side of them looking at each other. And again, I'm going to show you how that works. So what I want to do now is, this is the beautiful marketing slide. What I want to do now is take you under the hood and, give you the engineering views of what's going on inside our cameras. This is the raw output of one of our cameras, one of our new studio cameras. We have a 4K sensor in there. And again, a lot of our cameras now are moving to what's called EPTZ, or electronic pan, tilt, and zoom. Because we've got this 4K sensor now, because we've got these growing number of pixels that we can play with. We can actually do some quite clever stuff digitally with regards to image processing in real time. So I just want to talk through a little bit of what's going on here and what you're seeing. So the first thing you'll notice is this image looks a bit weird. It's kind of pin cushioned. You can kind of see it here. It looks kind of squashed in, you know, at the top and the bottoms. And the reason for that is because the camera's got a 120-degree field of view. A lot of customers are going for huddle rooms. You want to sit very close to the screen and burn your retinas in these smaller huddle rooms. But the challenge with that is when you're going to a very wide angle camera, by the nature of optics, you're going to get fisheyeing. And by fisheyeing, there's two real challenges. One is it makes all the kind of lines in the room look as if they're slightly bowed, and it also makes everyone look as if they've had a few too many biscuits and cakes and donuts and such like, and no one wants that in a meeting environment for sure. So we de-warp the image, we pin cushion the image in real time to make sure that, again, all these ceiling lines, all the skirting board lines, and David and Rommel here are actually in the right size and don't look like they've had a big lunch and you know, it's an afternoon call and they're relaxing out in the meeting room. So that's the first thing, so the de-warping of the image so that you get that really nice straight line. Some of the other things that are going on here, just to explain some of the things you're seeing. You'll see the green box here around David and Rommel's face. That's the real-time facial recognition happening. So inside the camera, there is an AI engine. It's sitting there and processing, looking for the T shape of the eyes, the mouth, the nose, looking for those faces and tracking them in real time. You can actually see the coordinates there on the image. The other things we do is you can see this blue box, this sort of banding box around David and Rommel here. That's the area of interest. So we're detecting faces in that box, in that area, and we're saying that's the area of interest that we want to concentrate on. That's where the group framing is kind of happening. Now you'll notice this kind of cyan bar over here. Now the interesting point of this is the audio triangulation, because if you just went on visuals, if you were a country that maybe has your president on the wall or your you know, a picture of your chairman on the wall, we don't want it tracking to a static. You know, we need to make sure these are real people. So the audio triangulation you know, goes on and makes sure that this is actually you know, happening in real time. And this is actually this piece here is actually a video. It's a real recording, as I say, of our systems. And if I'm just going to roll it on, you'll see in real time as David and Rommel talk here, and as if more people come into the room, you can see the room then fills up. You can again see those green boxes, see that facial recognition happening in real time, seeing the box change. Now, again, because we've got the AI engine, because we have the processing inside the camera, it doesn't matter if we're using Zoom or Teams or BlueJeans or whatever software or application, which we could use using Facebook video to talk to our grandmother if we wanted to. All of this AI technology is inside the actual camera. So what you actually get on the output is a beautifully produced video production. So if I show you, this is the raw camera, what the camera sees and what the camera is processing. If I actually show you the final production, so here is that exact same scene, but as the raw output of that. As I roll this through, you'll see the camera really nicely zooming into Alan as he talks, again, bringing him into the spotlight as he's got the floor. As then Gabriella goes to talk, you'll see a really nice smooth pan across to Gabriella. And we're doing this all digitally on the sensor. There's no motors or panning and tilting mechanically. Again, Diana will come to talk and it will smoothly pan to her. Now, the AI engine at this point will see that Diana and Gabriella are kind of having a bit of a ping pong between them. They're sitting very close to each other, so we'll just pull back and show both of them on the screen at the same time. They're the two important speakers who will pan out. Then someone else comes into the room that's slightly further away. So again, the AI engine is sitting there going, okay, you're further away, I'm going to do a cut. Because rather than this massive, great big camera move that's going to make everyone seasick on the call, I'll do a cut. And then again, as David goes to talk, we'll do a cut back to him. Because again, that algorithm is saying, you're further away, I'm not going to do a pan, I'm going to do a cut. Now, again, as these two guys talk between each other, you'll see that split screen come in. And this is what's really important. And again, we talked about TV production rules, and it picks up really nicely from what David was talking about. What you can see here on the screen with these two people, David is sitting very close to the screen. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we've had to kind of pull right out. And on the left-hand side of the screen, because they're really, really far away, we've had to kind of zoom in. So we've got this kind of idea with one side of the screen zoomed in and one side zoomed out. But what we always want to try and maintain is that same eye level in the top third of the screen. If you do any kind of TV production, you want to frame the image, make sure the eyes are in the top third of the screen. If you bring up on your iPhone, you can bring up the grid. That's exactly to get those eyes in the top half of the screen. And again, we want to try and make sure that their kind of faces are reasonably the same size. You don't want a massive face on the left-hand side and a tiny little face on the right-hand side. We want to try and maintain the aspect ratios. And again, because we're able to do all of this AI processing, all this video and image processing in real time and the hardware, it doesn't matter what software you're using. Again, you'll get this production rule happening. You can just concentrate on your meeting, and to you in the meeting room, it doesn't matter. But again, for that one or two people that couldn't make it into that meeting, because again, they're working from home, they're working in a different office, they're getting this produced kind of TV style production, trying to bring them into the conversation as best as possible. So it's just some of the stuff we're doing on the new cameras. There's going to be more of this stuff, more production rules coming into the technology, and as these sensors increase, we'll then be able to do deeper levels of zoom and deeper level of AI in there. David, what do you think?
Yeah, no, that's amazing, David. You remember when I brought the little QB camera with me to Zoomtopia and dropped it on the table in front of you and three of the other analysts, and then just kind of sat down and did nothing. That was an early generation of this, where these cameras, if they're built right, are now able to do all of this stuff that we used to have to pick up remotes for. So no more user intervention. I feel kind of stupid with a degree in television production from the City University of New York, because I don't need it anymore, because everything I learned's in the boxes. So I'm glad I've upped my career in the unified communication space. But it's definitely going to be, think about all the rooms and systems that we've got installed where you've always had to adjust the shot. Even us today, getting headroom together and everything else, it's just never going to have to be done anymore, because all of that intelligence and effort is now moved into the devices, and we can focus on the content.
So let me ask a question.
Go on, Tim.
Let me ask a question real quick, because I'm old enough to remember when the first robotic studio cameras were out there, and the camera operator unions, depending on what city you're in. Here in St. Louis, it's local UAW, or it's a local IBEW.
IBEW.
Yeah, thank you. At what point do we get rid of the robotic cameras? What point do we come up with an 8K camera or a 16K camera that does exactly what Neil's talking about in an actual studio environment?
Well, I'll tell you, there are theaters being built nowadays that have on the balcony front arch 20 megapixel, 30 megapixel camera sensors shooting the stage, and they just shoot everything. And then if that happened to have been, somebody's last performance or a great show by a concert or a performance, you can go in post with much of the tools that David Maldo was showing us, and simply after the fact, cut a beautiful production quality with zooms and split screens and everything, but you're doing it all digitally. The optical piece of it is no longer necessary. As the sensors get bigger, these are 4K cameras, as you point out, 8K, 16K, 20K sensors. These things exist nowadays. It's going to mean there is a difference. I still have my production education. There is a difference between a zoom and a truck, and the difference between a pan and a dolly, because it does different things, changes the relationship of the characters. I remember my Herbert Zettel book, no question. But for the most part, a lot of this stuff is now going to be able to be done digitally, and there are sporting events now. There's an interesting company out of Israel called Pixelot that you may or may not have heard of, that are putting these huge image sensors in sports stadiums that are following the soccer ball or the football or the hockey puck automatically. So not only don't you need a camera person, you don't need a big installation. And by the way, you can put this in every high school now and charge the parents $10 to watch their son play in the hockey game or their daughter play on the soccer field all year. It's completely changing the way production is taking place, all because of these intelligent camera capabilities.
I'll tell you one. Sorry, David. Go.
Yeah, just one thing that stood out to me, because I've in the last couple of years, I've seen a lot of demos for a lot of intelligent cameras. This is a huge trend in the industry. And just to give my friends at Poly a little, something that I noticed as someone who sat through a lot of these demos. There's been a big debate in the industry. How do we do this? Do we pan? Do we cut? Do we zoom in? What's the right way to do intelligent framing? And I like the fact that you guys said, sometimes we want to pan, sometimes we want to cut, sometimes there is no right answer. It depends on the situation. And that's almost like a generation 2 of looking at the problem. Because at first we were just like, hey, we can digitally do some of this stuff and we had no idea what to do with it. So just instead of saying there's one right answer, no, it depends on what we're doing. That stood out to me as something somewhat unique about Poly's approach to this problem.
And again, that's the artificial intelligence. There is intelligence in the camera. It's not just always doing a cut and then making the people at the end feel seasick because they're constantly strobing between the people talking. We're making these decisions and producing this video. I think the one interesting thing, and as you mentioned, there are other competitors out there, copying some of this technology. And again, it is becoming more and more prevalent. Some of our chasers and the people following us have been trying to emulate some of this stuff in software, and the actual response times and the capabilities aren't as high. The one interesting thing that we're looking at with this is actually taking it to a different level. So we talked about production rules and producing the video. That's one thing. But actually, because we've got this data, because we've got this machine learning in the room, we can actually pull some of this data out and use it as almost like an environmental sensor. So you saw those green boxes on everyone's face when I showed you the debug. Actually, we're counting those, and we can say this room had 4 people in it from 9 till 10 and 6 people from 10 to 11. We can use it as an occupancy sensor. We can use it as a room utilization sensor. We can even, again, start to do some really clever things around, how many laptops are in the room, how many chairs are in the room, and again, how much of that technology, and using it for insightful data that we're putting into a new insight and management tool. Because as we as Poly move more towards an eco and application model of solutions like Zoom and Teams, where they own the management and they own the platform, we can then, as a manufacturing vendor with these smarts on the camera, be able to take those and use that AI data and use this metadata to then say provide insights into the usage of the room, and as I say, use it for just more than production rules, give you that deep level of analytical data, and that's what you're going to see more of.
Tim, let me give you the last word on this. Any your thoughts and comments about what we've seen today, about where a lot of this technology is going, both the physical and editing virtual?
Well, I think it's going to be a combination. It's going to be a combination of the glass, as it were, to use old school technology, old school terminology. It's going to be the actual physical cameras themselves and the capabilities of those and the technology of those. But really, and we've been saying this for years, and this is not just in the AV or the UC space, it's every space. Software is going to drive this. Both what Maldo showed us, as well as what Neil showed us, and what you and I, David, experienced with our friend Mr. Netto a couple weeks ago when we were doing the live AV and the AM. That software, that AI, and that constant learning AI is really, really going to drive this, and really going to kind of propel all of these capabilities. And yes, every 13-year-old is going to be able to do this. But that also means that every person that wants to work from home is going to have the capability to really, really up their game and connect with folks on a totally different level.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you. So David, how do people get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing?
Let'sDoVideo.com or on Twitter at Let's Do Video.
Terrific. And Neil, how do people reach you, get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter too, at nfluister, if you can spell that. I'm also on YouTube, so search for, you can just Google Neil at Poly. I'm the only one at Poly, I think. I'm the only Neil actually at Poly, I think. So if there is any Neil, sorry. But yeah, hook me up on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
He's in the mailroom, Neil.
Tim, AVNation, how do we find out more about what's going on at AVNation, not just my show?
AVNation.tv. If you want to hear me talking about how much the Blues are awesome, you can follow me on the Twitters at TD Albright.
Terrific. And I'm David Danto for the IMCCA, for AVNation TV, for whoever the heck else I'm representing for this particular show. Thank you for joining us. We'll have some more interesting content coming up in the near future, but for now, appreciate you joining us, and see you soon.